It's fine, sir.
Yeah, okay. Change update ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ settings.
Update sir, ಹೊಸ update Zoom.
Yeah, so yeah. Okay, all of you turn your videos on. So ಇರೋದೇ ಇಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಅದೇನಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತಿಲ್ಲ? ಯಾಕೆ students think that they have revised the subject by themselves? I don't know. Okay, no problem. So let's start. Let's start with our prayer. Essay 200.
Overall objectives of independent auditor and conduct of an audit in accordance with standards and auditing.
Essay 210.
Agreeing to terms of audit engagement.
Essay 220.
Quality control in the audit of
Audit
financial
of financial statements.
Essay 230.
Audit documentation.
Essay 240.
The auditor's responsibility related to the fraud.
Essay 260.
Communication with those charges.
Essay 299.
Joint audit
Audit
of
of financial statements.
265.
Communicating deficiencies in internal control to those charged with
Control.
Management.
300.
planning and audit.
Audit of financial statements.
315.
Identifying and assessing the risk of material.
320.
Materiality planning and performing an audit.
402.
Audit consideration for introducing a service
Using a service organization.
Service organization. 450.
Evaluation of statements submitted by duty audit.
100.
Audit evidence.
05.
external
Information.
01.
audit
Consideration.
Specific consideration for selected items. 520.
Analytical
procedure.
10.
initial audit engagement.
Initial audit engagement opening balance.
Opening balances. 530.
Audit sampling.
Audit sampling.
Sampling. 580.
Written
Representation.
representation.
600.
Using the work
The
of
work of
auditor.
another auditor.
Another auditor. 620.
Using the work of auditors.
Auditor's expert. 540.
Auditing and accounting estimates, including fair value accounting estimates and related disclosures.
Disclosures. 560.
Subsequent events.
Subsequent events. 570.
Going concern.
Concern. 550.
Related
Related parties. 600.
Using the work of another auditor.
Another auditor. 700.
Forming an opinion and reporting on.
Forming an opinion and reporting on financial statements. 720.
Auditor's responsibilities related to other
Information. 705.
modification
to the opinion and
independent auditor's report.
701.
Communicating key matters in the independent auditor's report.
706.
Emphasis on
Emphasis on
matter paragraphs and other matter paragraphs in the independent auditor's report.
710.
Comparative and corresponding figures in comparative financial
statements.
770 ಆಯ್ತಲ್ಲ 710 ಆಯ್ತಲ್ಲ.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So okay, we have covered all the standards. So in our last class, we covered the audit evidence, we covered assertions, we covered essay 505, right? So now let's continue with the further aspects. Essay 501, which talks about audit evidence, specific consideration for selected items. So essay 501 covers 3 items. What are they?
Inventory, litigation, claims.
Litigations and claims and segment information. So first aspect is inventory. The provisions of essay 501 or the principles as envisaged in essay 501 covers about the existence and condition of the inventory. So it is not going to address any other assertion. So relevance of the audit procedures or audit techniques, 501 is aiming to address the existence assertion. So how do we perform the existence assertion of inventories? By taking part in the physical verification of the inventory counts performed by the management. So this is something that the standard expects every auditor to follow, unless it is impracticable. That is also there, right? So what do? We evaluate the management's instructions, the SOP, standard operating procedures for the counts, and also how the results of those inventory counting is taken care of. Second, we are going to observe the performance of the physical count process by the management, inspect the inventory. So here, inspect the inventory means what? In this context, inspection as a technique has two meanings. One, inspection also means inspection of records and documents. Another inspection means
Physical
Physical
examination.
very good.
verification.
Physical examination of asset. So here we inspect the inventory. That means what? Physical examination of inventories. Okay. And then lastly, perform test counts. Test counts means what? On a sample basis, I take a few samples and match it with the books. So we have sheet to floor and floor to sheet. So we do both the activities to ensure whether the inventories are actually matching to the physical verification counts. And then what are the controls over the entities' perpetual inventory records? How is it going to reflect? What are the results of the inventory count process? How is it factored in their accounting records? Is something that we will have to verify as auditors. Now, what are the matters that are relevant in inventory count process? That is very important. Page number 4.5, page number 69, 4.5. So we are going to do three things. IOO, inspect the inventory, observe the instructions, obtain evidence and the reliability of the management's count process. So these are the techniques that we are going to do. IOO, remember IOO. Okay, inspect the inventories, observe the counts process, and then obtain evidence on the reliability of the management's count. ಅಂದ್ರೆ 1, 2, 10, 20, 30 10 kg ಇದ್ರೆ 100 kg ಅಂತ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರೆ you don't get reliability on the count process that they have performed. ಎಲ್ಲ ವೆರಿಫೈ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ ಅಂತ based on your observation we'll have to examine. Okay, now what are the matters that are relevant for inventory counting process? This is important. Page number 69, 4.5. See, I told you one of the model test papers has one question. They have given 6 and they've asked you to write 2. So ನಾವು ಜನರಲಿ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ 10 ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಇದ್ರೆ 5 ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಓದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮುಗಿರ್ತೀವಿ. ಅನ್ಫಾರ್ಚುನೇಟ್ಲಿ ಅದೇ 5 ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಅವ್ರು ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇನ್ನೆರಡು ಬರೀರಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬರೆಯಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಪೆಸಿಫಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿ ಬರ್ಬೋದು, ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆ ಇದೆ. ಯು ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟುಡ್? ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್? ಸೊ ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ರೀಡ್. ಸೊ ಅಟ್ ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ lucky, if you are lucky enough, what are the matters that are relevant ಅಂದ್ರೆ at least basic aspects ನೀವು ಬರೀಬಹುದು. I told you in the previous revision class also that nature of the inventory, risk assessment, all those are the common points across auditing that you can write for any question. You not consider okay whether it is relevant or not. You write whether if it's not relevant, you'll not get marks. If it's relevant, they'll mark automatically. Okay. So what are the points? Nature of inventory. That means whether it's raw material, finished goods, or work in progress. Stage of completion in case of work in progress, 60%, 30% complete. What is the stage? Risk of material misstatement relating to inventory. ಇವಾಗ ತುಂಬಾ smaller components ಇದ್ದು high value ಇದ್ರೆ higher risk ಇರುತ್ತೆ. And if it is subjected to environmental factors or anything which is subjected to a lot of weighment ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ those inventories carry higher risk of material misstatement. ಈಗ ಪೀಸು ನಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಈಸಿ, ಬಟ್ ವೇ ಮಾಡೋದೆಲ್ಲ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಷ್ಟ. ಕ್ಯಾಲಿಬ್ರೇಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ that is quite risky. Then nature of the internal control. This point is always it always be a part of your answer. You cannot disregard internal controls. And then whether adequate procedures are expected to be established and proper instructions for counting process. Whether there is an SOP, written process to conduct this. And then timing. This is a very crucial aspect. Timing of inventory counting means what? Whether it is done as at the date of the financial statements, is it done pre or is it done post? So if you do it, ideally, you should do it on the date of the financial statements or as practicable as possible. Let's say 31st is a Sunday. So you'll have to do it probably on Monday. 31st is a government holiday. You may have to do it a day after or a day before. Does not make much of a difference. But if the gap is quite like a week's time or, 5 days, 10 days time, then you'll have to also perform the audit procedures on that intervening period. Intervening period means what? From the date of count till the date of financial statements, either you have to work back or work forward if it's done pre or post as the case may be. So that is why timing of inventory counting is very important. Whether the entity maintains a perpetual inventory system means what? Inventories are being recorded on real-time basis. Once the GRN is raised, inventory inward is recorded. Once the sale invoice is raised, the outward is also reflected. So whether it's done. The location at which the inventory is held, important. If there are branches, multiple locations, where you cannot visit all the locations. And the materiality of those units, location, and also the internal controls over there. Whether any assistance of auditor's expert is needed. Who is an auditor's expert?
A person who has experience in the field other than auditing or account.
Very good. Any person who possesses expertise in the field other than auditing and accounting, from whom auditor intends to seek information, will be an auditor's expert. Example is what? Who's an auditor's expert? Example.
Engineer.
Lawyer, engineer.
Very good. Lawyer, chartered engineer, actuary. Right? So they're all the examples of tax professionals or tax consultants. So they're all considered as auditors expert from whom he wants to take some information. So all these are important. Then if you are not able to perform the physical verification of inventories, then you need to do alternative audit procedures at least. Now during COVID, there was complete restriction in the movement. So at that point in time, we were not able to perform physical verification. So we have to, anyway, whenever you can't perform the actual procedure which is stated as per the standards, you'll always have to perform alternative audit procedure. It can be different based on the entity to entity that you audit. So generally what alternative audit procedures you can verify? Ratio analysis. If you understand the ratio, see the gross profit margin, if it's almost same as that of prior years, that means your closing stock should also be correct. Well, that addresses both valuation and the existence of inventories. And then second point, you see the movement of the goods in the first week of the next financial year or the inwards in the last week of the financial year to see whether inventories were there in the stock so that it has gone out. Like 1st of April, 2nd of April, dispatch ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸ್ಟಾಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಬೇಕು ಮಾರ್ಚ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. So that gives you corroborative audit evidence. Contradictory, corroborative audit evidence. So you have to perform alternative audit procedures. If alternative audit procedures are also not able to perform, then it constitutes what? Limitation on scope. Either it could be imposed by management or other factors. Then you'll have to decide the implication of such on your nature, timing and extent of other audit procedures. Communicate with those charged with governance or management as the case may be. Decide if there is a need for you to modify your opinion in accordance with SA 705. So that is what you'll have to perform. Then impracticable cases are very, very rare. Like for example, if it poses a risk on the auditor's health or safety or location. Now let's say there are a lot of locations situated in the Middle East now. Today I can't go there. Right. So it is impracticable for anybody to perform audit procedures there. But still, you need to consider the effects of the possible effects. I will have to put it this way. Possible effects of the misstatements because of the absence of information. So that is what is covered in this. And then if the inventories are held with third parties, that means what? Warehousing or consignment, only goods, you have supplied goods on consignment basis or warehousing. In all these cases, what you do, you can either perform audit procedures at the location of the third party or obtain external confirmation on the quantity and the condition of the inventories lying with the third party. Also, you can obtain service auditor's report covered under SA 402. All these things can be considered by the auditor. Okay. And then page number 72. If inventories are held with third parties, what audit procedures can be performed? Those examples are important. That is what we have discussed now. Inspecting the documents regarding inventory held by third parties, requesting confirmation, attending or arranging for another auditor to attend, or obtaining service auditor's report. Another auditor's report means using the work of another auditor, 600, or service auditor's report, anything you'll have to perform. The next section was litigations and claims. Right? So litigations and claims. Also, okay, fine. Now, when you cover 501, also connect it to CARO. CARO 2020, second clause number 2, talks about what? Inventories. Whether physical verification of inventories were performed by the management. And were there any variations? Material variations. Right? So that has to be reported by the auditor for each class of inventory, 10% or more.
10%.
Right? So that has to be considered. And if the entity has been sanctioned with working capital limits at any point in time from banks or financial institutions exceeding how much?
5 crores.
5
Very
crores.
good. 5 crores. Then the stock reports, the quarterly statements furnished by the entity to the bank is in agreement with the books of account. If there is any variation, those variations are to be reported along with the reasoning for the same. All these, though the second part of the clause is not relating to 501, Because we are reading about inventory, we may as well read about this. Also, you can cover audit of items of financial statements, inventories, all the procedures that we have discussed, especially disclosure requirements and audit procedures. So cover both, everything. When you read, you will be completing multiple sections at a time. Now you can do it. In class, I didn't do it, but now you can do it because you know all the other concepts. Next, litigations and claims. So the concern for the auditor is probable obligations or possible obligations or liabilities which are to be recognized. That is our concern as auditors. So litigations and claim means what? Lawsuits which are pending adjudication, claims for damages or for product claims, warranty claims, all those things which leads to litigations are covered under this special consideration, because as an auditor we need to see whether all the liabilities have been recorded for completeness assertion, and presentation and disclosure also. What is it? Contingent liabilities. It has to be disclosed, right? So with that intention, we need to perform audit procedures. So we'll have to do three things. Remember internal rate of return, IRR. So first is what? Inquire the entity's internal legal counsel, in-house legal counsel. Second one, review. I review the minutes of the meeting. So in minutes of the meeting, probably they might have taken any decision or discussion about the subject matter. And then review legal expense account. Connect it to specific selection methods. Under specific selection methods, there are 4 high value key items over certain amount, items to obtain information. So if you have paid 50,000 to a lawyer, you are not going by the amount, you are going by the attribute. Why was this payment made to lawyer? That is the purpose, to understand the bigger picture. ಯಾರಿಗೋ ಲಾರಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನೋ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಇದೆ, ಏನೋ ಲಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಇರಬಹುದು, ಅದು ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ಲೋಜರ್ ಆಗಿದೆಯಾ? That is what we will have to verify. These 3 things are important. Now, what is important is communication with entities. Internal legal counsel is permissible because premises goes hand in hand. But if all these litigations or claims are handled by an external counsel, you can't directly communicate. So it has to go through the entity. So what happens if you write simply a simple mail, they may not respond. A formal letter of inquiry needs to be addressed. So what are the contents of the letter of inquiry? That is important. Page number 74. If it is considered unlikely that entity's external legal counsel will respond appropriately to a letter of general inquiry, like if someone asks you in a mail to give information about the entity that you are auditing, you may not provide because confidentiality. Same holds good for lawyers. So in that case, what happens? Here, you need to underline a letter of specific inquiry, last but one line. What are the contents in the letter of specific inquiry? What will you write? Ask or seek. List of litigations and claims. Where available, management assessment of the outcome of each of the identified litigation and claims is estimate on the financial implications and cost involved, and request that the entities external legal counsel confirm the reasonableness of the management assessment. See, because in provisions, AS29, we follow that 50-50 rule. If it is remote, no need to disclose or recognize it as liability. If it is possible, disclose it as contingent liability. If it is more than 50%, recognize it as provision. You know this metrics, right? In AS29, you would have read. Remote andre, the possibility of that liability materializing is remote. Andre, tumba rare. Adagade illa andre, no need to disclose as contingent liability also. No need to create any liability. But if it is less than 50, but you are doubtful, that means it becomes possible obligation. So you'll have to disclose it in the financial statements as contingent liability. If it is more than 50, that means you feel that ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಕಾರ 60% ನಮ್ಗೆ ಬರಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ you will have to create it as liability. Take the hit to the P&L and create corresponding provision. So management's assessment whether it's reasonable, because obviously entities will always be positive. No sir, we will win the case. We will win the case. Whether it is reasonable is to be confirmed by the advocate. So these are the things that you need to confirm. Sleeping?
No,
No, sir.
Not yet. ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೊಸದಾಗ ಅನ್ಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಿರಲಿಲ್ವಲ್ಲ ನಿನ್ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ? ಇಲ್ಲ. ಓಕೆ, ಎಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ನಿದ್ದೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗಬಹುದು. ಅಥವಾ ನಿಜನೇ ಹೇಳಿರಬಹುದು. ಓಕೆ, ನೋ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್. ಸೊ sometimes you may also have to meet the external legal counsel because the matter is so complex. So that meeting will happen with the prior authorization of the client and also in the presence of the client. In that case, what you should do, Why is it necessary for you to meet the legal counsel? If I'm not wrong, Jan 26 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎರಡರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಬಂದಿತ್ತ ಅಂತ, ರೈಟ್?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಫೋಕಸ್ ಶುಡ್ ಬಿ ಲೆಸ್ಸರ್. ಎರಡರಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ್ದು ಬಂದಿತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇನ್ನೊಂದನ್ನು ಸೀರಿಯಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಓದಿ. You understand? So maybe this aspect requires when is attendance required with the entity's external legal counsel? Andre, when the matter is complex, when it carries significant risk, when there is disagreement between the management and the entity's external legal counsel. So in all these cases, andre management ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಗೆಲ್ತಾ ಇವೆ ಅಂತ, ಲಾಯರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರಿಬ್ಬರಿಗೆ they are not in sync. So in this case, you'll have to meet. Sir, ನೋಡಿ ಸರ್ ಇವ್ರು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ನೀವು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. So go and meet them. Okay. And if management refuses to meet, what is it called? What will you call it as?
Limitation on scope.
Limitation on scope. Again, same tape recorder, repeat. Perform alternative audit procedure, discuss the management on the reasonableness of the same, perform alternative audit procedures, determine the implications on nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedures, and then modify your opinion in accordance with SA 705. ಅದು ಹೇಳಿ ಯಾರು ಅದು ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು ಏನೋ ಊಟ ಮಾಡದೆ ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಲ್ಟರ್ನೇಟಿವ್ ಆಡಿಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೀಜರ್ ಅಂತ ಇರ್ಬೇಕು. ಅಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಓದಿರ್ಬೇಕು ನೀನು. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್, then we move to segment information. Segment information ನಾನು ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಮಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಇವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಹೇಳಲ್ಲ, because all the things that you now know in AS 17, you just have to write it in auditing context. ನನಗೆ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಈ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ಗೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ 501 ಸೆಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಬರ್ಬೋದು, because ಅವ್ರು ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಲಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಕವರ್ ಮಾಡಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಪಾಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ಆಸ್ಕಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಸೆಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಆರ್ ಇನ್ವೆಂಟ್ರೀಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಹೈ. ಸೊ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಐ ಫೀಲ್ ದಟ್ ಸೆಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ they may ask. Or Indes ಅಂತೆಲ್ಲ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಬರೆದ್ರು, don't worry, it is same as what you have read. Okay, so you don't have to think that, oh, I don't know anything about Indes. Whatever you know in AS 17, you have to write the same thing. All the things that you have understood, you'll have to write it in auditing terminology. That's all. Okay, auditor shall verify whether it constitutes a reportable segment. So what are the considerations? See, you need to classify segment assets, segment liabilities. You need to prepare segment P&L. So in that, what you should do, inter-segment transactions will be there. And then common assets will be there, common liabilities, those apportionment, how is it done? All those things you need to verify. That is covered in 77. That is important. 76 and 77. Those two sections are quite important. Okay. Now, while we were speaking about litigations and claims, you can also connect it to section which I love you the most, 143. What is it? Litigations and claims can be connected to I love you section. What is it? (143) subsection 3, clause J, other matters. Reference is made to Rule 11 of CAR 2014, which covers 5 to 6 items. Whether the company has disclosed the impact of pending litigations on its financial position in its financial statements is something that in the auditor's report I am supposed to comment, which is basically talking about litigations and claims. So connect it to 501. You remember? So there were 6 items that we had to report. What is it? Litigations, and then material foreseeable losses, transfer of money to IEPF, round tripping finance, audit trail, dividend compliance. These were the items that are covered in that rule 11. It's a very important rule. Companies Audit and Auditors Rules of 2014. Okay, connect. So wherever you read, you also connect it to reporting standards, so that is also parallelly completed. Okay. Next. Now we'll move to SFI 30, which is audit sampling. What is audit sampling? What we practically do?
Performance of audit procedures to less than 100% of the population, such that
Very
all
good.
the sampling units have a chance of selection.
Yes, performing audit procedures to less than, this is how you should always write. Performing audit procedures to less than 100% of the population is considered as audit sampling, an important aspect. And how are we going to do where the population sampling units have no chance of selection? That is very important. Objective is to ensure that auditors, what is the purpose of doing audit sampling?
Drawing conclusion on the
Drawing
population.
conclusions
Very good.
on-
To draw conclusions on the overall population by doing the sample study. So sampling poses one risk. What is the risk?
Sampling risk.
Sampling risk. What is sampling risk?
That the conclusions drawn based on sampling might be different if the entire population was tested.
Very good. The audit conclusions would have been different if the entire population were subjected to same audit procedure. That is called sampling risk. Gap between what conclusion you have drawn versus what you should have drawn if you had verified the 100%. Sampling risk is because sampling risk leads to two erroneous conclusions. What are they?
Test of
Sampling risk,
controls are more effective when they are non-test of details or conclude the test of material misstatements doesn't exist when they actually
doesn't exist when in fact it does. That is one erroneous conclusion. What is the other erroneous conclusion?
Controls are less effective when they are more effective, and material misstatement exists when it does not exist.
So these are two erroneous conclusions. How does it affect audit? First and second, how does it affect
Effectiveness and efficiency.
effectiveness and efficiency? See, what is it? In case of one erroneous conclusion is what? In case of test of controls, we conclude that controls are effective, when in fact there are a lot of deviations. And in case of test of details, we conclude that there are no misstatements, but in reality there are misstatements. So this is going to affect what? Audit efficiency or audit effectiveness?
Effectiveness.
Very good. Audit effectiveness, because the auditor is likely to give inappropriate opinion when the financial statements are materially misstated. Second case is what? Here, the second case specifies the test of controls are not effective when in fact it is, and in case of test of details, a misstatement exists when in fact it does not. This affects what?
Efficiency.
Why? Auditor will take more time and energy to conclude that his initial observations were incorrect. So it will take more time and resources to do more and more activity, leading to these two erroneous conclusions. So not all risks relating to audit is attributed as sampling risk. So just because we apply sampling doesn't mean that everything is sampling risk. So it cannot be considered or concluded like that. Now there are two methods of sampling. One is statistical sampling and the other one is non-statistical sampling. So what determines whether it's a statistical sampling or non-statistical sampling is the size of the population. So that is what is going to decide whether it's statistical sampling or not. The size of the population will never and ever decide whether it's statistical sampling or non-statistical sampling. It will not decide. Sample size is never a determining factor or criteria to consider a sampling to be a statistical sampling or non-statistical sampling. So what determines is use of probability theory, then random selection, and
No personal bias.
what?
Personal bias.
No, that is one of the advantages. The third one is helps you to measure sampling risk. So three things. One, you use probability or mathematical theories to draw the samples. Two, use of random sample. Random sample means what? Where chances, each and every item has a chance of selection. And lastly, the methodology should help you to calculate the sampling risk. Okay, so these three factors make a method of sampling to be called statistical sampling. Any other method apart from this is non-statistical sampling. So that is something which is important. And then we are talking about population a lot here. So what are the characteristics of population? CAR. Completeness, accuracy, and then, completeness, reliability, and appropriate. Appropriateness is related to the relevance. Completeness ensures that data is not incomplete, so that your conclusions also are going to be valid. And then lastly, reliable, obviously the ability to believe the document based on its source and nature. Next, advantages of statistical sampling, that is important. And yeah, page number 451. This is quite important. In class also I've told. Factors that should be considered while deciding upon test checking. ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ ಒಂದು ಪ್ಯಾರಾಗ್ರಾಫ್ ಇದೆ, ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನಾವು ಓದ್ಬೇಡ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸತಿ. ಕೆಲವು ನಿದ್ದೆ ಮಾಡೋರ್ಗೆಲ್ಲ ಇದೊಂಥರ ಅಲಾರಾಮ್ ಇದ್ದಂಗೆ, ಸ್ನೂಸ್ ಹೊಡೆದಿರ್ತೀರಾ. ಸೊ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸತಿ 2 minutes ಆಯ್ತು, ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸತಿ ಎಬ್ಬಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೀನಿ. The decision whether to use a statistical or non-statistical sampling is a matter of auditor's professional judgment. However, sample size is not a valid criteria to distinguish between statistical and non-statistical sampling approach. Okay, so next, factors that should be considered for deciding upon the extent of checking. Test check basis. So what are the factors? Sir, TC, size of the organization, state internal controls, reliability of the books of account, tolerable error range, and then desired confidence level, confidence, C. So tolerable error range means what? Tolerable error means what? If the
where the auditor is willing to accept
errors and still give opinion without any modification. So degree of desired confidence and tolerable error range are mutually exclusive. So it's like this pass and fail. If my tolerable error range is 5, then my desired confidence will be 95. If my tolerable error range increase, my desired confidence also will. Desired confidence andre ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕು ನಂಗೆ, ಜಾಸ್ತಿ assurance ಬೇಕು ಅಥವಾ ಕಡಿಮೆ assurance ಬೇಕು. Desired, I am desired to take more confidence on the item. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ AIR 1 ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು 18 hours ಓದ್ತೀನಿ. 400 ಬಂದ್ರು ಸಾಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ 400 ಅಲ್ಲ 300 350 ಅನ್ನೋದಿಲ್ಲ. 300 ಬಂದ್ರು ಸಾಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ 6 hours ಓದ್ತೀನಿ. ನಾನು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ 1 hour ಬೇಡ. So that is tolerable error range. So that is what decides. Next, and desired confidence. Advantages of statistical sampling, it's not so important. Just go through. Sampling process, design, size, selection, audit procedures, nature and cause of deviations, projecting misstatements, very important, evaluating the results. So sample design. So one, you need to understand the purpose why we are performing sampling. That means I need to understand the objective of the audit procedure or the objective of the audit within which I will have to do the execute the techniques and obtain audit evidence. What type of evidence am I looking at? So if I'm doing physical verification, my evidence will be in one form. If I'm verifying the valuation, my evidence will be in another form. So it decides what type of evidence I am seeking, and also it should satisfy both the relevance and the reliability, which is sufficiency and appropriateness. Both should be satisfied. So when I do sampling, it should also adhere to SAAE. Just because you are doing audit sampling, you can't say I've selected only 5 samples out of 1 lakh units. It should both adhere to the sufficiency and appropriateness requirements as covered in 500. So that's how you should design your samples. Next, value weighted selection. Value weighted selection means what? Weighted average. You assign weights, more importance to the values, and then draw the samples from the population. So that is one way of doing it. Stratification, we have understood. We'll come to the methods of sampling. Next, how do I decide the sample size? The sample size will be selected in such a way that sampling risk is reduced to an acceptably low level. How do I perform audit procedures? I should perform audit procedures to ensure that my audit risk is reduced to an acceptably low level. Same way, I need to select sample size in such a way that my sampling risk is contained as low as possible. Okay. So the next important aspect would be the factors affecting the sample size. So we have 2 aspects, test of controls and test of details. So Yeah. So I'll ask you the factor. You have to tell me how does it impact in case of test of controls. An increase in the auditor's assessment which takes into account relevant controls. An increase in the extent to which the auditor's risk assessment takes into account relevant controls, whether the sample size will increase or whether the sample size will decrease or the sample size is independent of this factor.
Increase.
Increase. Why will it increase? Because the more and more the auditor wants to place reliance, the more and more his expectation considers that test of controls are to be considered, he will have to do more testing. So to do more testing, he will take more evidence. He will take more samples. Next, increase in the expected rate of deviation of the population to be tested.
Increase.
Increase, decrease.
Decrease.
Increase.
Increase in the expected rate of deviation in the population. Increase, decrease, no change.
Increase.
Increase.
ನಾನು ಒಂದೇ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಹಚ್ಚೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಒಂದೇ ಇರಬೇಕು ಕಾನ್ಫಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ರೆ. ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸಾ ಡಿಕ್ರೀಸಾ?
Increase.
Increase. See, the more I expect, see, if I expect that you will go wrong, that means what, I'll give you more problems to solve. Isn't it? ನಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು ನೀವು ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ 10 ಅಲ್ಲ 20 ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀನಿ, ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬನ್ನಿ. After doing 20, you may be confident. So when I expect more errors, I will test more. So when I test more, sample size will also go up. Stratification in the population.
Decreases.
It will decrease. But in case of controls, stratification may not really be used. Correct? So number of units in the population.
Unchanged.
Independent.
Unchanged. Negligible effect. Because the size does not matter in case of audit sampling. Then increase in the desired level of assurance.
Increase.
It will increase. Why will it increase? Because I want to take more assurance on these controls. So when I have to take more assurance in these controls, obviously I have to test more. Only when I read more, my confidence will increase. Only when I test more, the assurance level will increase. So for me to test more samples are required or less samples are required? More samples are required. Then decrease in the tolerable error range.
Increase.
Increase. So the tolerable error range from 5 became to 2 means I should be 98% confident. So 3% extra. That means I have to extra work extra. So my population size will also increase. Right? So these are the factors. Increase in the next, in case of test of details, when the auditor's risk assessment considers that there is an higher risk of material misstatement,
Increase.
it will increase. If RSMM is high, auditor cannot ignore. We'll have to do it. Then increase in the desired level of assurance that the misstatements are not exceeding materiality.
Increases.
Increase. Increase in tolerable misstatement. Decrease. Right? And then stratification.
Decreases.
Decreases the sample size. Increase in the other substantive procedures. Use of other substantive procedures addressed with the same assertion.
Decreases.
Decrease because you are doing lesser work here. Number of units.
Unchanged.
Negligible effect. So this is how we will have to decide. This is a very important aspect for your exam, tested in MCQs. So quite crucial. I'm happy that you are able to answer. It's good. Next, methods. Sample selection methods. So we have random sampling, systematic sampling, monitor unit sampling, haphazard sampling, block sampling. So random sampling has two: simple random sampling and stratified sampling. Simple random sampling means what? All the
Every unit
units
has
in
a
the population has an equal chance of selection. I randomly pick few items. Let's say in the sales invoice register, I take randomly sale invoices 8, 25, 36, 22, 91, 125, 100 and 1086. Like that, if I select, that is random sampling because any item, any sale invoice could have been picked up. So all the units have equal chance of selection. So here randomly I pick, I close my eyes and select one person. It can be anybody. Your name came up. So it's simple. It's very simple to do it. Either I use random table or I just take that select. Now, stratified sampling means what? What is stratification? It is the process of converting multiple. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes.
So where you have multiple items of varied natures and characteristics, what you do, you classify it into heads of same category, and then from each of the heads, you're going to pick samples. So this heads is called stratum. The plural form is strata. So what you are going to do, you are going to convert the heterogeneous data into homogeneous data. Thereby, you select the samples from each of the strata. So whenever you have to draw inference on the overall population, your results have to be first extrapolated to the entire stratum. Then you have to aggregate the results, the misstatements or the observations, whatever you have made. Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
So stratification helps you to reduce the variability in the data and thereby making your population size, sample size lesser. Like for example, goods, sale of services, job work, accessory sales, after sale services, multiple components are there. So you divide all goods one section, job work one section, others one section. So from each section you can pick. If you don't pick it up, there is a possibility that you may not check everything, every aspect of sale. It's verify ಮಾಡಿರೋದೆಲ್ಲ ಬರೀ goods ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, job work ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿರ್ಬೋದು because some sample ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲದೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. But when you split it, from each you will select. You understand? So that's how we are going to verify. Then systematic sampling, it's also called as
interval sampling.
So what do you do? From the given lot of the samples, you are going to determine intervals. So your samples will be selected at that interval. For an example, I have 1 lakh units. I want 10,000 units. So I divide 1 lakh by 10,000. The result is the number. So every X number will be selected. Like for example, 8. Every 8th invoice will be selected. So if I start from invoice number 10, so then I will select 18, then I'll select 26, then I'll select 32, like that 40, so on and so forth. So it's like census. It happens every 10 years once. So that's an example of interval. Same way, in interval sampling also, the starting point can be random. I can randomly select invoice number 102. From there, I follow a particular pattern, which is systematic. That's why the name. So 102 in the 10, then 10, then jump. It is like your arithmetic progression. Mathematics will ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ. AP. The difference between two terms is constant. So that is systematic sampling. Then monetary unit sampling, the selection is mainly based on the monetary value. Now, when you debtors ಅಲ್ಲಿ aging bucket ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, okay, it could be based on, okay, money up to 1 lakh, 1 lakh to 10 lakh, 10 lakh to 20 lakhs, 20 lakhs to 30 lakhs, 30 lakhs to 40 lakhs. Is it monetary unit sampling or stratified sampling?
Stratified sampling.
What according to you it is? Did you understand the question? So in the debtors, entire debtors makes up to, let's say, 10 crores. So in that, what do I do? There are thousands of debtors. So what do I do? Up to 1 lakh. Then 1 lakh to 10 lakh, 10 lakh to 20 lakh, 20 lakh to 30 lakh, 30 lakh to 40 lakh. So like that I divide based on the money. And from each one I will select samples. What type of selection is it?
Stratified sampling.
Stratified sampling.
It is stratified sampling. It's not monetary unit sampling. Monetary unit sampling is purely based on the monetary amounts. Okay. And then haphazard sampling means what? No approach, no methodology. Just like that I select it without any particular aspect, judgment. Like I will select February month, March month, Jan month. Important for me because it's the quarter closure, year-end closures. So that's why I didn't apply any of the other methodologies. Or I select last week of every month's transactions. There's no logical approach to it. So that is haphazard sampling. And then block sampling, what is important is to create blocks. So how do you create blocks? Based on the items which are adjacent, contiguous. Items which are placed next to each other are made as blocks. And from each block, you're going to draw samples. So how do I understand in audit perspective? Now you go to the daybook of the entity. You extract the daybook dump. It contains all transactions, right? Sale, purchase, receipts, payments, and everything. You make first to 20, day 1 to day 20, one block. 21st to 30, one block. Then another block. From each of the block you select. Or you based on vouchers, 1 to 100, one block. 101 to 200, block 2. 201 to 300, block 3. From each of the block, you're going to select the samples. But in auditing, it is not suggested to apply the block sampling, though it is very simple, economical, but it's not suggested to use in audit. And then what are you going to do? You're going to perform audit procedures on the selected samples from the methods that you have used, and then you fit into the audit objective or purpose. So when you're testing something, one example what study material also gives you is that you are trying to verify the controls, whether authorization is made properly. So in that case, what are you going to do? You're going to see whether checks are authorized, only then payments are made. So you're going to get one cancelled check. So you can't apply the same principle. So what do? You see whether the check which is cancelled is with proper authorization. So whether the authorization process or control works for both valid checks as well as void checks. So that is what you are going to do. So this is called performing audit procedures on the replacement item. And then what happens? Sometimes you select a sample, but you may not be able to apply audit procedure because the documents are not there or management does not give you the information. So what happens? You have to perform alternative audit procedure. Now for an example, there are 10 debtors. You pick one debtor where management does not allow you to send a confirmation for that particular debtor. Are you now able to perform audit procedure on that? No. That again causes limitation on scope. You have to deal with it accordingly. But you have to consider the impact of that on your overall conclusions. And then you may find deviations. Deviation is a term which is used in controls context, and misstatement is used in the case of substantive procedures or test of details. Test of details. So for analytical procedures, you don't have sampling. That's right. So what we do, we may identify misstatements or deviations. Analyzing the root cause for these misstatements or deviations is important. So you see whether those misstatements are anomalous misstatements. So what do you mean by anomalous misstatement?
Extremely rare
Yes.
misstatements.
Misstatements which demonstrably not the representative of the mistake. It's like exceptional misstatements. Come to page number 66. Anomaly. That box is there. Important. Anomaly may be defined as a misstatement or deviation that is demonstrably not representative of misstatements or deviations in population. It's like exceptional errors. Why is it important? Because the next activity is projecting misstatement. See, the whole purpose of doing audit sampling is to draw overall conclusion on the population. So I draw inference on the population. Andre Artha samples, let's say I take 100 sale units, sale invoices, and I verify and I identify 20 misstatements. If I identify 20 misstatements in 100 sale invoices amounting to, let's say, 5 crores, what could be the misstatement in the population of 1000 sale invoices aggregating to 70 crores? So this activity is called projecting misstatements. So whenever you project misstatements, what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to ignore the anomalous misstatement, because that's not going to be the pattern in the population. So in that case, you should also be careful about system errors. System errors will be there across the population. And the calculation GST rates have been wrongly classified and calculated under that misstatement will not be there in one item. It will be there across all the transactions. So you need to analyze why this misstatement has arisen. What is the reason for it? Whether it does it give rise to any fraud risk factors is something that you will have to verify. And then on the basis of which you are going to extrapolate it, called projecting the misstatement. There is no explicit projection required for test of controls, because the deviation what you see in the samples will be the deviation in the population. If a control doesn't work here, it will not work for others also. So that's why there is no explicit requirement of projecting the deviations in controls. Now, what is auditor's best estimate of misstatement?
Projected misstatement.
Projected anomalous.
Plus anomalous misstatement. If the projected misstatement and anomalous misstatement is very high, it gives you unacceptable sampling risk, as a result of which auditor cannot rely on the result of the sample and probably have to do 100% verification, because samples are not representative of the population, is what I feel. I'll have to extend my audit procedures either to 100% or more. That is what is the logic that we'll have to apply. Then tolerable misstatement. What is tolerable misstatement? Page number 4.67. Let's read.
Tolerable misstatement. A monetary amount set by the auditor in respect of which auditor seeks to obtain an appropriate level of assurance that the monetary amount set by auditor is not exceeded by the actual misstatement in the population.
So tolerable misstatement is what actually? Is actually the application of performance materiality. What you apply for population, if you apply the same thing for sample, that is tolerable misstatement. So it is like this. In the samples that I verified only, if I'm identifying so many misstatements, it is most likely that actual misstatements in the population may exceed materiality set. Sample alle 1,000 rupees nodidini misstatement andre population iralla ashtu misstatements. Even if I consider, it may not exceed the materiality set. Samples alle if I've identified 2 lakhs worth of misstatement, ಇನ್ನು ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಇವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಇನ್ನು ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟಿರ್ಬೋದು ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸು ಅಂತ ಅಂದಾಜು ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ that misstatement may exceed the materiality which is set for the financial statements. So that is what I'm trying to do. So what is performance materiality? Can anyone tell what is performance materiality?
I see you example for material like performance materiality.
What is performance materiality?
It is the amount or limit set by the auditor less than the actual materiality on the financial statement as a whole, so that the undetected or immaterial misstatements as an aggregate do not exceed the materiality.
Yes, very good. What is performance materiality? It is the amount or amounts set by the auditor at less than the materiality level, such that the probability of the aggregate of the undetected and uncorrected misstatements exceeding materiality is reduced. So remember that beaker, one line below materiality, so that it's like a buffer. It acts like a lead time ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಹೆಂಗೆ goods ನ ಆರ್ಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋ, that is an alarming factor for you to perform audit procedures on those accumulated misstatements which are uncorrected or undetected. Why undetected? Because you'll have to always consider, no, because you may not do 100% verification. So all the uncorrected misstatements, you ensure that it's corrected, so that at any point in time, the misstatements does not exceed materiality, even after taking into account the factor for those misstatements which I have not detected. ಆ ಕ್ವಶನ್ಗೆ ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮೆನ್ಸ್ ಮೆಟೀರಿಯಾಲಿಟಿ help ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. So that is application of performance materiality to sample is tolerable misstatement. Same is the case with tolerable rate of deviation. That means what? Up to this level, the way of understanding is what? Up to this level, auditor would still be okay to have misstatements without having his opinions modified. Up to performance materiality, you will not be bothered, right? Will you be bothered? The moment misstatements are reaching to performance materiality, you will start working. Up to that, you will continue what you are doing. You'll sleep. Then only you will awake. Understood? So that is what is covered in essay 530. So next, essay 520, it talks about analytical procedure. Very small discussion. ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದು 520 ಮೇಲೆ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಬಂದಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ Jan 26 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ನೋಡಿದ್ ದ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೈ ಮೆಮೊರಿ ಅಂಡ್ ನಾಲೆಡ್ಜ್. ಸೊ ಬರ್ಬೋದು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಬಂದ್ರು 3 to 4 marks ಇರುತ್ತಷ್ಟೇ. What are analytical procedures? Definition is very important. Page number 98. Let's read it once. 98.
Evaluation of financial information through analysis of plausible relationships among both financial and non-financial data. And also encompasses such investigation as is necessary of identify fluctuations or relationships that they are inconsistent with other relevant information or that differ from expected values by a significant amount.
So what is it trying to say? It is evaluating the financial information through analysis of plausible. Plausible means what? Reasonable. Reasonable relationship between the financial and non-financial data. It also includes, very important, it's like now I can say, Shetty sir would have probably used one sentence. Standard costing without variance analysis is a waste exercise. He has used it. So if you just analyze the difference, it's of no use. So you need to investigate why that reason has arisen. What is the root cause? So financial and non-financial data. Example is what? Number of employees to payroll. Rent to the average rent in the market that it is there. Square feet and rent rate. Expectations are very important in analytical procedures. So then when you have the expectation, you would always try to see whether the actual amounts are in line with the expectations set. So that is what analytical procedures include. So examples of analytical procedures, one is comparability. So what do? I can do comparison with prior periods. I can do comparison with that of the other entities of the same industry. So that is something that I can do. And then consideration of relationship. One is comparison. Second one is relationship. Relationship means what? Ratios. So here what am I going to do? I'm going to consider certain ratios which are expected to be constant, like gross profit ratio, return on investments. They are generally not expected to vary significantly unless the business is affected materially. So that is something that I can do. Financial and non-financial. Based on certain factors, I will be able to do it. So these are all the examples of analytical procedures. So if you come to the subsequent paragraphs, 99, examples of analytical procedures having consideration of comparisons. Underline, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ MCQ ಕೇಳಬಹುದು. Analytical procedure MCQ ಗೆ scope ಜಾಸ್ತಿ. Comparable information for prior periods. It's also called what? What technique do you use?
Trend analysis.
Trend analysis, very good. So you use trend analysis. Then anticipated results of the entity such as budgets or forecasts or expectations of the auditor such as estimation of depreciation. See, IT entity andre one expectation irutte, their profit margin should be somewhere between 15 to 18%. Manufacturing entity andre their profit should be somewhere between 10 to 12%, 8 to 9. Trading andre it should be as high as 25 to 30%. So this expectation is compared with the actuals. Or budgets and depreciation sudden kadme agogide, assets ella jaasti agide, but compare ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ last year ಈ ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಏನೋ ಮ್ಯಾಚ್ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. Rent also, It is there is a sudden decrease in the rent. So you're comparing with your expectation or with the budgets or with the industry norms, whatever can be the case. So next one is what, or also now let's say you're auditing some FMCG or retail based entities, but you see debtors position is very high. Now you start comparing the debtors position of this entity with that of the other entities. ಈಗ ಕನ್ವೆನ್ಷನ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಡೆಟರ್ಸ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ ಶೋಸ್ ಸಮ್ ಸಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಂಬಿಗ್ವಿಟಿ. ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ನೋ? ಇವಾಗ ಮ್ಯಾರೇಜ್ ಹಾಲ್ ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಡದೆ ಯಾರು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರ ಹಾಲ್? And that too you have high debtors andre something may be wrong in your receivables. So this is comparison. Then consideration of relationship, gross profit, net profit, ROI, FT to interest rates, borrowings to interest paid, all those comparisons we do, right? Because of the consideration of its relationship. Relationship is what we will consider by taking into account the ratios. Next. SA 520, what is the scope of 520? 520 is used as substantive analytical procedure. Why is it important? Because analytical procedures can also be used as risk assessment procedures. If you use analytical procedures as risk assessment procedures, it is covered under SA 315. Analytical procedures are performed near the end of the audit while he is drawing an overall conclusion as on the financial statements and to draw or to perform substantive procedures. So two areas. So analytical procedures can be performed in the planning stage, it can be performed in the testing phase, and it can be performed in the conclusion phase. Planning phase, generally you are going to use 315. For testing and conclusion, you are going to use 520. Scope is using analytical procedures as substantive audit procedures, which helps you to obtain audit evidence, and using analytical procedures while drawing overall conclusions on the financial statements. The second part is not there for your syllabus, so we are only restricting to the first part of the aspect. So what are the factors which are going to affect analytical procedures is something that we'll have to understand. So what are the factors? Spenda. So S, source. So the source of the information should be reliable for the auditor to apply analytical procedures so the results can be established well and can be believed. Second, P, predictability. Analytical procedures are more useful if the data tends to be predictable. That is the reason why we say P&L items have more predictability because they establish pattern. ಈಗ ರೆಂಟ್ ಒಂದ್ ತಿಂಗಳು 1 ಲಕ್ಷ ಅಂದ್ರೆ can you predict the rent for the whole year? You can easily. 1 lakh into 12, probably 5-10% on the higher side because of escalation. Correct, no? So it has predictability, ability to predict the data is quite high in case of P&L items. So P&L item tends to be more predictable in nature. And also relationship between sales and debtors. If you know that if sales, you can predict debtors position and an average based on the age this ratio, you know, average collection period, debtors turnover ratio, you can predict it. Correct, no? You can predict it. But it's not as easy for balance sheet items because suddenly if a debtor pays you the money, the debtor's position might get affected. Right? That is P. A is availability of data. I mean, I don't have to tell. The data is not available. There cannot be analysis of the information. Then SPAI, inherent risk. What is inherent risk?
Susceptibility of an assertion to a misstatement that could be material before consideration of related controls.
Very good. If you disregard internal controls, what are the things that could go wrong? All the factors would cause inherent risk. Right? So now if the item is having higher inherent risk, it is not suggested to perform analytical procedure. So that is something that we'll have to understand. Cash, inventory. Yeah, where you can apply analytical procedure, but the inherent risk is very, very high. Don't use it because the bottom principle is risk of material misstatement. If it is more, don't rely on your analysis. Sir, don't use your mind for calculations. Use calculators only because inherent risk is high. ನೀವು 2 into 6 18 ಅಂತ ಬರ್ದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾರೇನ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ? Though your computation is all correct. So that's why don't use your brain, use your calculator for calculators, for calculation purposes. Then SPAI, N andre nature of assertion. Analytical procedures are generally more useful for valuation assertion, completeness assertion, rather than rights and obligations existence. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಏನ್ ಅನಾಲಿಸಿಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆಯಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ ಅಂತ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ಸ್. ಇನ್ವೆಂಟ್ರಿ ಇದೆಯಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನ್ ಅನಾಲಿಸಿಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾನು ಕೌಡೆ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೇಳಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗಿ ಇನ್ವೆಂಟ್ರಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ನೋ? ಬಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್ ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಡೂ ಇಟ್. ಕ್ಲೋಸಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾಕ್ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಇದೆಯಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೋದು. ಗ್ರಾಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ರೇಷಿಯೋ ಶೋಸ್ ದಟ್ ಸಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಎರರ್ಸ್ ಇಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಎನಿ, ರೈಟ್? So, and then when you do expense ratio comparison, expenses have gone up too high or come down, you can analyze quickly what is the reason. So valuation, it gives you more help. It will be more helpful for valuation assertion and completeness. If rent 1 laksha idre, at least 12 laksha irbek rent. 11 laksha idre yen artha? Most likely they have not recorded the rent for the last month because bills may have been received later. So they might have forgotten to create that accrual or provision. So that is what it indicates. SPA, aitala, IN, aitala, ella aitala. So all these. D is disaggregation of data. Disaggregation of data means what? The ability to drill down the data into further components. Yoga phase of the P&L kotre one analysis ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. Schedules to P&L kotre one more analysis ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. The GLs, the ledgers that make up to the schedule, if I give you, the analysis can be extended much higher. So it is all dependent on how far you can disaggregate the data and provide. And then lastly, account type. Analytical procedures are more relevant for P&L items than compared to balance sheet items. So these are the factors that affects the use of analytical procedures. Now the techniques that are available are what?
Trend analysis, ratio reasonableness,
Test and structured modeling. So these are the main techniques that we use. Trend analysis means what? Comparison with that of the prior period or periods, with the results of this entity vis-a-vis the results of any other entity belonging to the same firm or industry. Then ratio analysis means what? It's understanding the relationship of two accounts, two items of the financial statements, and thereby trying to draw meaningful conclusions. So this is the need. This need is also recognized in the Schedule 3. That's why, as per the requirements of amended Schedule 3, all the entities are now required to disclose key financial ratios. There are about 10 ratios, if I'm not wrong, that entity is required to disclose. Not just the ratios, they are also required to provide what is considered the formula for calculating the ratio. The numerator has to be explained, the denominator has to be explained, and variation in excess of what percentage reason should be provided?
25.
How much? Very good. It is 25. If any ratio has varied by more than 25% as compared to last year, then entity is also required to give the reasons for the same. Connect it to disclosure requirements of Schedule 3. Key financial ratios. They may ask you to write any 3 key financial ratios. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ Schedule 3 knowledge ಇರಬೇಕು ಅಂತೇನಿಲ್ಲ. FML ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು 3 ರೇಷಿಯೋ ಬರೆದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಆಯ್ತು. ಗ್ರಾಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ರೇಷಿಯೋ, ನೆಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ರೇಷಿಯೋ, ರಿಟರ್ನ್ ಆನ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್. ಅದು ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಇದೆ. Debtors turnover ratio, creditors turnover ratio. Marks ಬರುತ್ತೆ. So just to be use your general principles of other subjects. Then reasonableness test ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? Comparing the nature of the items by checking with other related aspects. Like for example, interest and interest rates. When you take the average of the loans and take the interest, when you divide it, you get 1%. So that percentage you can compare it with the general industry interest rates alwa. FD is entity hatra FD ಇದೆ, interest recognize ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. When you divide this by average fixed deposits, so you are getting somewhere about 14%. What is your view now? What is your view? When you did the interest received, interest income divided by the average FD, You got something as 14%. What is your view? Okay, not okay, something is not right. What is your analysis? Something is not right because I'm coming and disturbing you. But apart from that, what else? ಏನ್ರಿ ಈ ತರ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? ಎಲ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ FD ಇಟ್ಟರೆ 14% ರಿಟರ್ನ್ ಬರುತ್ತಾ? ಮತ್ತೆ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಕೂತಿದ್ರೆ ಕ್ಲೈಂಟ್ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ನಿಮ್ನ. Something is definitely wrong because interest rate seems to be much higher than what is the industry rates. So you'll have to see, probably is it because of omission in recording the interest income of the last year, or is it because of overbooking of interest in the current year, or is it accounting it twice? Could be any of the reasons. Or the FD averages, average is affected by extreme values. So during the year, they have redeemed a lot of FDs. Because of that, the average FD is coming lesser. I'm not saying that definitely there is wrong, but I'm saying something needs more examination or analysis. So that is what. So that is reasonableness test. Then, and the example ಕೊಟ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋದು ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. So you are auditing an entity which is into exports. Okay, software exports. They have a lot of receivables outstanding at the end of the year, as at March 25 or 26. Entity has booked foreign exchange loss. Okay, not okay. Same example ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೆ ಕ್ಲಾಸಲ್ಲೂ. Not that I've given completely new examples. Okay, not okay.
Not okay.
Not okay. Why?
It's an IT entity.
Why it is not okay for you?
They have receivables.
So just because you have receivables, you should not get loss.
They might be able to recover the loan.
Not loan, receivable, debtors.
The
See,
dollar value is
ಇವಾಗ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡೆ ಇದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ. ಇವಾಗ ಡಾಲರ್ ರೇಟ್ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ?
Rising, sir.
It is rising. Rather, rupees depreciating. So ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ರಿಸೀವಬಲ್ಸ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗತ್ತಾ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗತ್ತಾ? More, no? When you sold it was 90. Now what is the rate? It is 93. So you've gained 3 rupees, no? So how can you book foreign exchange loss? This is a reasonableness test. You understood? A software company has recognized very less ISP cost. ISP is the Internet Service Provider cost. Something is not linking, no? Something is not matching. There should have higher internet cost, leased landline cost, or telecom charges. But they have very low internet charges. Andre, not really okay. You understand? So that is reasonableness test. And in structured modeling, andre now today with the help of AI, other tools and softwares in markets, what do? You use some models which predicts the anomalous patterns or unusual transactions can be identified with the help of analytical procedures. When we do analytical procedures, we have to be careful because it is performed at the very broad level. So it may not help you to, as such, detect the misstatement. It may only provide you the direction in identifying areas which may possibly contain misstatements. So you have to use it with caution. So what are the steps that are involved in use of analytical procedures? Determining the suitability, whether analytical procedures fits into your audit domain. That means you need to again consider the spend of factors. Evaluate the reliability of the data. Reliability of the data is affected by what?
source.
Source
and nature.
Nature and controls over its preparations. So that you'll have to evaluate. And then third point, what I had, which is causing a lot of irritation, expectation. When you have to develop an expectation. Only when you develop expectation, you can compare the expectation with the results and then match, see if there is any difference. That differences are to be investigated if it is materially varying. You understand? So, and then what are we going to do? Consider what is acceptable difference, that plus or minus is okay. If for example income tax ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಕಿವಿ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಿದ್ದಿದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ರಿವಿಷನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಇವಾಗ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಗೇನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ 50C ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆ. ಇಫ್ ಯುವರ್ ಫೇರ್ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ if it is not exceeding 110% of your actual sale value, then your actual sale value will be considered as full value consideration. Right, so the 10% here is considered as what? Okay, even if you have deviated from the valuation. Ade gift income alladre adu 120 ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Correct? 120% ಇದೆ. So that is considered like a acceptable variation. That is something important for the auditor to verify. Now, if you come to page number 112 of your material, reliability of the data is affected by those 4 points are there, no? Source of the information, comparability of the information, SCNC, remember, show cause notice given to company. Okay, source of the information, comparability of the information, nature and relevance of the information, and then controls over its preparation. ಇದನ್ನ generalizations about audit evidence connect ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. Internally generated documents or internal evidence will be more reliable when the controls over its preparation is strong. When you have a strong control environment, you can rely on the data provided by the entity. Now, what are the factors? When I can't expect that all of us would get 100 on 100 in auditing, because the expectation is not precise. So precision is important. So page number 113. What factors would be considered when expectation is drawn? The accuracy with which the expected results of substantive procedures can be predicted, the degree to which the information can be disaggregated, the availability of information. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಓದಿದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ that if I remember spenda factors, most of the points are taken care of. You just have to remember those and write it properly. So when you do that, you'll be able to get the marks. Now, 8.12, page number 114, this section is very important. Investigating the results. Please mark it, read it. I strongly have a feel that this may come in your examination. Okay?
The page number?
112. That's what I told, I guess.
14, sir.
Sorry. Adu?
114, 8.12.
Yeah, 114, 8.12. Okay. So these are the topics that we have covered so far. So now let's go through the reporting standards. SA 700 series, important audit report. That's how we have also addressed, if I'm not wrong. In fact, after this, we took audit of items of financial statements, which took a lot of time. And then we moved to reporting. But audit of items of financial statements, more than for me to revise, it is for you to go through those points. And I believe that notes and revision notes also covers all the topics, and also disclosure requirements. That Excel sheet was shared with you, right? Covering the topics. So please prepare accordingly. Say one thing you understand, wherever you see amendments to Schedule 3, which is there, the importance is more for those items. So that is something that you will have to consider. Aging of debtors, creditors, promoter shareholding, capital work in progress, intangibles under development, and aging reports, and then ratios. Investments actually are very important. Share capital. These are the few disclosures which are quite essential for us to remember. Okay, and also now that chapter should be much, much easier because you have holistic approach of all other topics. Even Companies Act, now you can write anything relating to that. Like for example, they may ask you to write what is the utility of securities premium. The company wants to use securities premium for discharging the dividends on preference shareholders. So whether the action is tenable. In light of that, explain what are the cases where securities premium can be used. So you'll have to write all the utility. And then they may ask you about buyback provisions or bonus shares. So all those things right issue. Any of those things can be asked, which is a reference to Companies Act. And that chapter also has certain very basic accounting related stuff. For an example, What are the examples of revenue expenses which qualify for capitalization? ಅದೊಂದು ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಯಾವ್ದು ಯಾವ್ದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸ್ ಕೊಡಿ.
Wages for
revenue expense, but it is treated as capital item.
Wages for installation of machine.
Wages for installation of an asset. Yes, very good.
Transportation.
Expenses which increases the life of the asset.
Which increases the life of the asset. You should give an example. Don't just write expenses, because that specifically asks you.
Repairs.
Yeah, and then someone said
Testing charges.
the
Repairs.
transportation charges incurred for moving the assets, testing charges to make it operationally feasible, legal charges incurred for acquisition of properties, or stamp duty payment for acquisition of properties, commission or brokerage. All those things are, though revenue in nature, qualify for cap. I thought you would tell this, but it's okay. Borrowing cost as per AS 16.
60.
Interest cost on ACP assets, on assets for ACP. ACP means acquisition, construction, or production of a QA, qualifying asset. And foreign exchange loss, that is also an example. AS alle ನಾಪ್ಕ ಇದ್ರೆ ಬರಿಬೋದು. ಆ ಥರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಕಾಂಪೊನೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಪರ್ AS10? ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್. AS10 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೆಲ್ಲ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ನ ಇವು ಆಡೆಡ್ ಟು ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಇನ್ವೆಂಟರಿ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ ಪ್ರಾವಿಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ರಿಸರ್ವ್ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದು 3 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ಗೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ತರ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಆಡಿಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್, nobody should leave. That is a very, very crucial topic, chapter for all of you to read and prepare. ಮಾಡಿ. ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಸ್ಪೆಸಿಫಿಕ್ ಡೌಟ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ರೆ ಕೇಳಬಹುದು. ವಿ ವಿಲ್ ಕ್ಲಾರಿಫೈ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಆಡಿಟ್ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟ್. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಫೈನಲಿ ವಿ ಆರ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಅಪ್ರೋಚ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ನಾವು ವಿಲ್ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಒಪಿನಿಯನ್. Opinion has to be clearly communicated. Essay 200 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳುತ್ತೆ, your opinion should be clearly communicated by way of a report. So that's why we need to understand incidental standards 700, 701, 705, 706, 710. These are the major standards that is covered. Also reference to I love you section 143 of the Companies Act. First, opinion shall be expressed by the auditor when he has obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence which forms the basis to express. Sufficient and appropriate audit evidence is obtained by performing audit procedures. Now you tell me, will audit evidence give persuasive evidence, or audit procedures, will they give you persuasive evidence or conclusive evidence?
Persuasive.
Always persuasive. Why? Because of inherent limitations to the audit. Important. If the auditor, having performed the audit procedures, determines that there are misstatements in the financial statements, auditor may have to consider modifying his opinion. So that is covered under SA 705. So modification is of 3 types. What are they?
Qualified,
adverse,
and disclaimer.
Adverse opinion and disclaimer of opinion. So what are the components that are essential for you to determine whether it's qualified or adverse or disclaimer?
Sufficient and
appropriate evidence.
Whether the auditor has obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence or not, then
Material and pervasive.
very good. The misstatements, whether those misstatements are material or whether those misstatements are material and pervasive. These are the 4 important, that matrix you should visualize. If the auditor, having obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, concludes that a misstatement is material but not pervasive, what type of opinion will he give?
Qualified.
He give a qualified opinion. Material but not pervasive. If the auditor, having obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, concludes that a misstatement exists and such a misstatement is material as well as pervasive, what opinion? Adverse opinion. If the auditor, if he is unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence and he concludes the possible, see, look at the words that I'm using, possible effects of those misstatements is material but not pervasive, what opinion?
Qualified.
Qualified. If the auditor concludes that because of the absence of information, the effect of such misstatements of information is material and pervasive, what opinion?
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer of opinion unless withdrawal is prohibited by way of a law or a regulation. If you reach to this stage, the ideal solution should be what? Likita, you should not sleep. The position should be to withdraw from the engagement. If it's not possible, then you'll have to give disclaimer of opinion. Understood? These are the 4 aspects that we'll have to take into consideration. What is pervasive? Pervasive is a term which is used in the context of misstatements. What do you mean by pervasive? What is pervasive?
Which has effect on the financial statement as whole or a substantive effect.
Yes. Good. Pervasive means what? It is the effects of the misstatements on the financial statements or the possible effects of the misstatements on the financial statements due to auditors' inability to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Pervasive is used in the context of misstatements. It is like far-reaching impact. Like for example, if inventories are materially misstated, it will not affect inventories alone. It will affect cost of goods sold, it will affect my gross, it will affect my profits, it will affect my tax, it will affect my reserves, it will affect my current assets. So many items are linked. On the other hand, if I omit to disclose any of the contingent liabilities, it affects only contingent liability disclosure. It may not affect all the other items of the financial statements. But pervasive means what? It affects whole or substantial elements of the financial. It is very difficult to define. It is very difficult to confine to items of financial statements. Even if you want to confine, it represents the significant or substantial portion of the items, or in some cases, it is fundamental for the users to understand. Well, that itself as a misstatement, it is always considered as pervasive. That is the reason going concern aspect is always important. Connected to 570. So these are the things that we have discussed. Now we'll come to audit report. So audit report, we have title. That's okay. You all know what title is. Independent auditors report, which distinguishes all the other reports issued by other auditors. Then addressee. Generally, it is addressed to, depending on the type of the entity and the engagement. If it's a company, it is addressed to whom?
Members.
Members of the company. If it's a partnership firm, partners of the firm, LLP, partners of the LLP, individual, the proprietor. And then we have opinion. Today we have directly, we are going to directly give our opinion. Opinion. If I just write opinion, what do you understand?
Unmodified opinion.
Unmodified.
Any modification is to be communicated. It has to be prefixed by the type of modification. That means what? If I'm expressing adverse opinion, I have to specify adverse opinion. If I'm expressing qualified opinion, I have to provide qualified opinion. So that's the prefix which conveys what type of modification it is. And then after that, what do we have?
Basis.
Basis, very important. So in the introductory paragraph, opinion contains 2 things. First, identification of the entity. You identify the entity, you identify the financial statements, you identify the applicable financial reporting framework, you identify the period. It's like this. We have audited the accompanying financial statements of ABC Limited, which comprises of the balance sheet as at 31st March 2025, the statement of P&L, comma, the statement of cash flows, comma, the statement of changes in equity, and notes to account and a summary of significant accounting policies for the year then ended. So this is what we will first do: identification of the entity, the financial statements, the period, and then we will give our opinion. Opinion is written in what form? In our opinion, to the best of our knowledge and according to the information and explanations given to us, the aforesaid financial statements shall give a true and fair view in conformity with the accounting policies generally accepted in India of the state of affairs, of the profits or loss, of the cash flows for the year then ended. So this is how I communicate my opinion. Now here, I use the word true and fair you when. I use the word true and fair when.
Fair presentation framework.
Very
Fair
good. Then it's
presentation.
a fair presentation framework. If it is a compliance framework, connect it to applicable financial reporting framework. If it's a compliance framework, then I cannot use the word true and fair. What should I use?
Material.
You have to use in all material respects. The financial statements have been prepared in all material respects and conforms to or complies with the requirements of regulation, statute, ABC, whatever you want to write. Then basis for opinion, very important. Here we mention that the fact that the audit was conducted in accordance with the standards and auditing issued by ICAI. We are independent of the entity. We confirm that we complied with the ethical requirements. We have also communicated what a statement confirming the independence requirements, and we have applied safeguards wherever we have identified threats to independence. All these things are communicated, and if it's an unmodified opinion or qualified opinion or adverse opinion, we will specifically say that we believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to form the opinion. But if you are expressing disclaimer of opinion, you will never mention this because you have not obtained the audit evidence. And also you will say, we have conducted our audit in all the other forms of opinion, but when you're giving disclaimer of opinion, we were engaged to perform the audit is what you say, because you never conducted the audit. If you had conducted, you should have given an opinion. Now you are saying, I don't have any opinion. That means what, you have not done the audit. So that is what is important. Then we have management's responsibility for the financial statements, auditors' responsibilities for the financial statements, and then we have key audit matters. We didn't discuss about it. We have key audit matters. What are key audit matters? Key audit matters are all those matters which in the auditor's opinion is of sufficient importance to merit the or of significant in the context of the audit. That needs to be communicated. It is a matter selected from the matters that were communicated with those charged with governance. So that is mandatory for listed companies. This is important for you to remember. Reporting of key audit matters is mandatory for listed company audits. For other company audits, auditor may decide providing such matters in his report. Then we have going concern, which is connected to SA 570, and then other information 720. Responsibilities, management responsibilities, auditors responsibilities, location, other reporting responsibilities. If you're auditing a company, reference is made to 143, and then signature, place, date, and also very important UDIN, unique document identification number, has to be mentioned by the auditor for all the reports and certificates that he's going to issue to validate the authenticity of the documents. So that is something which is important for us to consider. Now, what is crucial in this is page number 6, specific evaluations by auditor. That box is very important. How will the auditor verify whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements? So what are the specific evaluations that he's going to make? Crucial. Then just go through the basis for opinion and opinion paragraph. For unmodified opinion, they may ask you to write what are the components that are covered. Then UDIN, knowing it is important. In one of the exams, there was a question on UDIN. We solved, right? Certificates and then audit report, confirmation letter. For all those things, not required letter of confirmation or letters that are given. Only if it is in the nature of a certificate, only if it is in the nature of an audit opinion, then you will have to generate UDIN, unique document identification number. Next. Quickly come to page number Sorry. 37. Definition of pervasive. What are the components of pervasive? This is important. Then that box, page number 40, we've just discussed. Now, page number 42 is what we have discussed right from essay 210. The chart. Limitation and scope, how is it dealt with? So remember the chart, you can cover all the other aspects. .9, page number 47. This is important. Unless required by law or regulation, and the auditor disclaims an opinion on the financial statements, the auditor's report shall not include key audit matters. If you're disclaiming, you should not give. Then key audit matters, what is crucial is what are the factors that determines key audit matter? Page number 52. Key audit matters are those matters in auditor's professional judgment were of most significance in the audit of financial statements of the current period. Key audit matters are selected from the matters communicated with those charged with governance. That means what? If any matter is not communicated with those charged with governance, it can never be a part of key audit matter. So that is something that you should always keep in your mind. So key audit, if it has to become key audit matter, it should be a part of 265. Only if it is a part of 265 can it be in SA 701. Page number 53. What are the factors that determines selection of key audit matter? Very important from exam perspective. Every now and then this is tested. Areas of higher risk of material misstatements, significant auditor's judgments that occurred during the period. So all these three things should be covered. And then for modification, for key audit matter, emphasis of matter, going concern, there are certain basic common principles. This area is not to be used as a substitution for modification. This area is not a substitute for disclosures that are otherwise required to be made in the financial statements. It is not to be construed as what? Separate opinion on the financial statements is something that, and these cross references are made when you're using 701 and 570. So three are common. They are not a substitute for modification. They are not a substitute for disclosure to the items that are to be presented in the financial statements. They are not to be considered as separate opinion. In the context of 701, you'll have to say that it is not a substitute for 501. Sorry, 570. In 570, you'll have to say it is not a substitute for 701. Why? See, it's overlapping. I don't know whether they're able to understand all these things. If it's a matter of going concern, obviously you would have communicated with those charged with governance. Correct? It's certainly a key audit matter. So should you disclose it under key audit matter or should you disclose it under 570?
570.
Disclose it under 570. Specific standard will prevail over a generic standard. So what you say, apart from the matters that are communicated under the going concern, there were no key audit matters that were required to be reported. That's how I report my key audit matters, because if it's a listed company, key audit matter is mandatory. But I don't have any other matters apart from this. Means you'll have to say, apart from this, there is nothing. So generic standard iddaga, specific standard will prevail. So cross references are to be made here. That is important. Then emphasis of matter paragraphs and other matter paragraphs. Definition of both EOM and OM is important. What is emphasis of matter paragraphs? Where an item which is appropriately presented and disclosed in the financial statements, where the auditor considers it to be fundamental for the users to understand, then such matters may be referenced to in his auditor's report. What is crucial is, if an auditor is drawing emphasis on any matter paragraph, then he should invariably express unmodified opinion that matter should be appropriately presented and disclosed. And emphasis of matter paragraph cannot be a substitute for going concern again. Obviously, if it's a going concern, the reference would have been made in the financial statements, but you can't draw it there because you're using a paragraph called material uncertainty relating to going concern. So you can't use EOM for that. So what are the examples? Normally, litigation and claims, or a major catastrophe which has had, or a subsequent event, or an application of an accounting policy before even they're implemented. All these are the examples where you use emphasis of matter paragraph. That means what is other matter paragraph? These are the matters apart from what is presented and disclosed in the financial statements, where the auditor wants to bring or highlight the user's attention, probably the auditor's responsibilities. So whenever there is a shared responsibility in case of branch audits or in case of consolidated financial statements, some of the aspects are certain other auditors are responsible. So I will have to highlight that to the users. How do I do it? With the help of other matter paragraphs. And both cannot be used as a substitution for modification, disclosures in the financial statements, separate opinions, not a substitute for going concern. So that is something you'll have to note. Page number 48, definition of both EOM and OM is important. Examples which may be considered to be included as part of EOM. 4. Uncertainty relating to future outcome of an exceptional litigation or regulatory action, disclosed as probably provisions or contingent liabilities. Significant subsequent event occurs between the date of financial statement and the date of auditor's report. Early application of accounting standard, major catastrophe that has had or continues to have a significant effect. Like ಇವಾಗ ಇರಾನಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ರೆ ಅವರು ಬರೀತಾರೆ ವಾರಿಂದ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಇವಾಗ ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು gas stations ಮೇಲೆಲ್ಲ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. Our financial statements will be materially affected by this fact. So they will have to disclose this. So that is something which is fundamental for all the users to have an understanding. Then 710, that is also important. Comparative information, corresponding figures and comparative financial statements. In this, what is crucial is the definition and the difference between corresponding figure and comparative financial statements. So what is the difference? What is the difference between these two? The difference lies in reporting. The difference lies in the way in which the opinion gets communicated. With respect to corresponding figures, auditor's report shall not refer to the corresponding figures. But in case of comparative financial statements, his opinion is going to be covering each of the financial statements that are covered. That means what? Corresponding figure example is what? Our schedule 3. So we have current year, we have previous year. Previous year figures are called corresponding figures. So when I express my opinion, I only express of the state of affairs as at March 26. I don't put comma and say 26, 25. Of the profits for the year then ended. I don't say for the year then ended as at 31st March 25, comma 31st March 24. I don't do it. My opinion is going to strictly be restricted to the current year figures, and corresponding figures extent of disclosures and presentation is primarily dictated by its relevance and the importance of those items in the context of current year. So that is what is the difference between corresponding figures and comparative financial statements. So page number 59. What is the corresponding figure? Comparative information where amounts and other disclosures for the prior period are included as an integral part of the current period financial statements and are intended to be read only in relation to the amounts or other disclosures relating to current period. That is what is called corresponding figure. The level of detail presented in the corresponding figure, amounts, and disclosures is dictated primarily by its relevance to the current period figures. Now, that is what I have told you. So, Schedule 3 without comparatives, will you accept as auditor? Will you accept as auditor if Schedule 3 is presented without comparatives? Bari current year figures matra madiyare. Last year dilla. Okay na nimge as auditors? It should not be okay because comparatives are an integral part of the financial statements. Any disclosure, any note that you provide should always have the corresponding figures effect unless it's the year of incorporation. Because there is no opening or comparative figures. So, ಅದು ಬಿಟ್ಟರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಎಲ್ಲ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲೂ ಬರಬೇಕು. Now, generally, auditor's opinion shall not refer to the corresponding figures, but there are a few cases where you refer to. What is it? 60, important. If auditor's report on the prior period as previously issued included a qualified opinion, a disclaimer of opinion, or an adverse opinion, and the matter which gave rise for modification is unresolved, the auditor shall modify the opinion on the current period's financial statements. On the basis, he referred to the corresponding figures in other cases because of the effects which is unresolved. Which standard can be corrected here? Sorry? Which standard has a reference to this? Point number 1 of page 60.
705.
No. It is 510. Initial audit engagements, opening balances. That standard is applied when? Only when it is being audited by a new auditor, which was audited by a predecessor auditor in the past, or when the previous financial statements were not at all audited. There are only these two instances where 510 will apply. 510 is not every year's standard. 510 applies only when there is a change. Where a new auditor takes over an assignment that was done by a previous auditor, you would apply 510. Or previously the financial statements were not at all audited. Like for example, partnership firm or an LLP or an individual. This year audit is mandated by whatever reasons, but up to last year there was no compulsory requirement. Then 510 will apply. So cross references to be made to 510. So that's what, if you remember 710, you can write for 510, vice versa. So in 710, corresponding figures shall not refer to auditor's opinion shall not refer to corresponding figures. What are the exceptions? First exception is 510. So if you remember 510, you can write the answer. Okay. Second point, if the auditor obtains evidence that the material misstatement exists in the prior financial statements, but an unmodified opinion was given. So all these points are covered in 510 only if you recollect. So all the points that are there in 510, prior period financial statements are not audited. Then also prior period financial statements are audited by a predecessor auditor. In all these cases, you can refer the corresponding figures. In your basis for opinion, you will say, why am I giving modification for the current year? Not because of current year, because of the corresponding figures. That means, why is it given? Because it is a part of your opening balance. That affects. It could either distort the comparison, it could be because of the fact that the opening balance contains misstatements, or it could be because of inconsistent application of accounting policies, but those changes have not been appropriately accounted for. Now, if there is any change in an accounting policy, retrospective effect has to be given. So if it is not given, obviously it constitutes misstatement. So those are all the cases where 510 covers. Corresponding referencing, reporting referencing is in 710. Now, what is comparative financial statements? That definition is important. Comparative information where amounts and other disclosures for the prior period are included for comparison with the financial statements of the current period, but if audited are referred to in auditor's opinion. Please underline this, are referred to in the auditor's opinion. Point of difference between corresponding figure and comparative financial statement. The level of information included in those comparative financial statements is comparable with that of the financial statements under the current period. But allenittu is primarily dictated by its relevance of the current year figures anta ide. So ಏನು ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಈ ಡೆಫಿನೇಷನ್ ಈ ಕಡೆ ಆ ಕಡೆ ಬರೆದು ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಆಗೋಯ್ತು. And then that takes care of your difference. So these are the aspects that we'll have to consider. 143, I believe you have covered in law. Do you want me to go through
Yes.
that again? The only thing that we will have to
No,
understand
sir.
is two important factors. One, inquiry points under 143 subsection 1, which also is what? Propriety aspects. Propriety aspects under Companies Act. So under propriety aspects, we have 6 points to inquire. So 143.1 covers two things. One is what? Right and power of the auditor to access the books of account information kept at the registered office or elsewhere, and he has a conditional access to the books of account records of the subsidiaries which are included in the consolidated financial statements so far as it relates to consolidation. So that is conditional. Standalone, it is unconditional. Full rights. Amongst other rights, the auditor is required to also inquire into the following. That's how it starts. 6 points are there. Whether loans and advances made by the company on the basis of security have been properly secured, whether and the terms are not prejudicial to the interests of the company. Second, whether the transactions represented by mere book entries are prejudicial to the interests of the company. Then, whether the company, not being an investment company, so much of its assets consist in the form of shares and securities have been sold at loss. Then, whether loans and advances have been treated as deposits, nomenclature change. Then, whether the company, if have issued shares for consideration in cash, cash is actually received. If not, the position is properly disclosed in the financial statements and the fact is not misleading. Then lastly, whether personal expenses have been charged to revenue account. Auditor is not required to report this every year unless and until he finds the answer to be in negative. Till then, there is no reporting requirement. Then 143 subsection 3 talks about auditor's report shall also include whether he has sought and obtained all the information and explanation, all those things are okay. But what is important is director's disqualification. Whether any director is disqualified from being appointed as a director under section 164.2. 164.2 talks about what? Defaults in filing of annual returns of the company for a continuous period of 3 years. If you are a director and if you have defaulted in filing the annual returns and the financial statements for a consecutive period of last 3 years, then you will be disqualified to act as a director in all other companies except for the company where the default has taken place, because someone has to make good the loss, right? It should be there. So any of the disqualifications, if any of the directors is subjected to, that has to be reported. That point 164 is crucial. Then rule 11, just now we discussed, right? So rule 11 of car rules is very, very crucial for you to remember. Then IFCFR 143 subsection 3 clause I. What does IFCFR talk about? Internal controls. और थोड़ा चाहिए.
Internal financial controls.
और थोड़ा चाहिए.
Internal financial control reporting.
Internal control, internal
With
financial
reference to
controls.
financial.
Yeah. ಅವ್ರ ಥೋड़ा ಪ್ಯಾಸ್ ಸರ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹಾಕಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಪಾನಿ ಕೊಡಿ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಕೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಯು ಆರ್ ಸೋ ಡಿಮಾಂಡಿಂಗ್. ಪಾನಿ ಹಾಕಿ ಸುಖಾಪುರಿ ಹಾಕು ಅದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ನ ಹಾಕು ಹೆಂಗ್ ಕೇಳ್ತೀವೋ ಹಂಗೆ. ಭಾವನಾ ಇಸ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ನೌ.
Not applicable to such private companies.
No. Don't preempt what my question next is. Internal financial controls with respect to financial statements. Internal controls is very wide. Internal financial controls is the responsibility of the company covered under 134. In case of listed companies, they have to provide all the disclosures in board's report. In auditors, we are only responsible for IFCFR covered under 143. What is that we are going to provide a report? Report covers what?
Operating effectiveness of the company.
और थोड़ा चाहिए. Adequacy. adequacy and operating effectiveness of internal controls with respect to financial statements. So, but it is not applicable for private limited companies subject to certain threshold. What is it?
50 crore
1%.
50 crores what?
aggregate borrowing.
Borrowings 50 crores or 25 crores? It's 25.
Borrowing
Borrowings is 25. Then turnover is 50.
50 crore.
Yeah, if your both needs to be satisfied to get the exemption. If you breach any one of the conditions, then gone. Again, please, I'm telling you, ಎಲ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಒಂದ್ ಚೀಟಿ ಬರೆದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಡಿ ಆಯ್ತಾ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ಅದಕ್ಕಾದ್ರೂ ಬರೀತೀರ ಒಂದ್ ಚೀಟಿ ಹಂಗ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೇನಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದ್ ಚೀಟಿ ತಗೊಂಡಿದೆಲ್ಲ ಲಿಮಿಟ್ಸ್ ಬರೆದಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ ಹೋಗೋದಿರೋ ತನಕ ಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಂಟಿಸಿ ನಿಮ್ ಮನೆ ಬೋರ್ಡು ಅಥವಾ ನೀವು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋ ಜಾಗನೋ ಅಥವಾ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಒಂದು ನೋಟ್ ಬುಕ್. ಸೊ ಓದುವಾಗ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಹಿಂದಿನ ದಿನ ಚೀಟಿ ತಗೊಂಡು ಹೋಗೋದು ಮರಿಬೇಡಿ. ಸೊ ಒಂದ್ಸತಿ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಚೀಟಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ತಗೊಂಡೋಗಿ ಹಾಲಲ್ಲಿ ಹರಿದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗಿ ತಗೊಂಡೋದ್ರೆ ಅಟ್ ಯುವರ್ ಓನ್ ರಿಸ್ಕ್. ಇವಾಗ ಹಾಕಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ, ಪಾರ್ಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಟ್ ಓನರ್ಸ್ ರಿಸ್ಕ್ ಅಂತ, ಆ ಥರ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಬೇರೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಇದು. ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಯು ಶುಡ್ ಡೂ ಇಸ್, ಇನ್ ಒನ್ ಪೀಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಪೇಪರ್ ರೈಟ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಪ್ಲಿಕಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಲಿಸ್ಟ್. ಇದು ಲಾ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ತುಂಬಾ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ನನ್ನ ಕ್ಲಾಸಲ್ಲೂ ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ಇವಾಗಲೂ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೀನಿ. ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೂ ಇದನ್ನೇ ಹೇಳಿರ್ಬೋದು, ನಾನು ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಕಾರು, IFCFR, IFC, and then internal audit. These are all relevant to audit. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ದು ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಇಡಿ. When it is important ಅಂತ. When is it applicable? Sorry. Okay. So that is something crucial. Rule 11, you have to compulsorily a must, especially dividend. 123 compliance has to be checked by the auditor. That has to be verified. Then, so that's what pretty much covered under audit report. But a major discussion is with respect to CARO 2020. Very, very crucial. Covered under 143 subsection 10. So exemption, before we get into CARO 2020, we need to also understand the applicability. Correct? So when is CARO applicable?
All companies, including
For
foreign
all the
companies.
companies, including foreign companies.
ಯಾರೋ ಪಾಪ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ when is it applicable in the small company ಅಂತ. CARO is applicable for all companies other than ಯಾವುದು?
Banking company,
Banking,
Insurance
insurance,
company,
insurance,
Section 8
small
credit
company,
one
One
person
Section 8
company, then
and
private
private
company
not being a
company
subsidiary
subject to
or holding
conditions.
company of
subsidiary
a
of a
public.
public company.
ಯಾರೋ ಒಬ್ರು ಇಂಟೆಲಿಜೆಂಟ್ ನಿತ್ಯ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ, ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಕಂಪನಿ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಟು ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ರು. ಹಾ, ವೆರಿ ಗುಡ್. ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದೋಸ್ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಸ್, ಇಫ್ ಐ ಮೇ ಆಸ್ಕ್ ಯು? ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಸ್?
Not
Paid
being
up
a
share
subsidiary or
capital.
holding
Paid
company
up
of a
capital
public
and
company.
share
Reserves and surplus less than or equal to 1 crore as on
Not
balance sheet.
exceeding 1 crore. PUC plus RS not exceeding
borrowing
1 crore. Turnover not exceeding 10 crores. Borrowings not exceeding
1 crore.
1 crore
crore.
at any
Crore.
point of
At
time.
any point.
exempt. Now, if you are a small company, even though the limits are exceeding, you will still qualify for exemption. That example we have solved. Let's take one simple example for refreshing our memory. Then let's say there's a company called ABC Private Limited, whose paid up capital and free reserves as on 31st March of 2025 stands at 3.86 crores. Okay. Paid up capital is, okay, 3.86 crores. Paid up capital is 2 crores. And then their turnover is 28 crores. And they have no borrowings. So it's a private limited company. If you see this, is it, and it doesn't have any holding company or a subsidiary company. Okay. If you see this, let's assume that this is the first year of operations of the entity. Okay. So now if you see, the turnover is in excess of 10 crores. The paid up share capital and reserves are also exceeding 10 crores. But the fact that this is a small company, is enough for them to get the exemption, even though the limits are in excess of 10, 1 and 1 as the case may be. Artha aita? So all that you have to do is first see if it's a small company. If it's a small company, put a full stop. Don't apply Caro. That means what? It will be mainly applicable for non-small private companies. Andreno, private companies which are either holding company, private companies which are either subsidiary companies. Aurge, this limb of exemption would be applicable. Normally, all others, they're covered under small company because the definition, the limit is so big now today, 4 and 40. Correct, no? So most of the companies fall under this category. But public company, no exemption. Even their turnover is 0, capital is 100 rupees also. Caro is applicable because that exemption is only for private companies. So this is the exemption applicability. Then we have about 21 clauses in Caro: fixed assets, inventories. With respect to fixed assets, physical verification of fixed assets, then physical verification of intangible assets, and the report needs to be verified by the auditor. Then title deeds of immovable property. What else?
Revalued amount.
Revaluation and Benami. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಿತ್ತು. ಇನ್ ಇಂಟ್ಯಾಂಜಿಬಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಫಿಸಿಕಲ್ ವೆರಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ಬಟ್ ಯಾರು ಏನು ಕೆಲವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅನಿಸ್ತು ಏನೋ ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ. ಬಟ್ ಅದು ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಅನ್ಸಿರುತ್ತೆ ಇವ್ನು ಮಾತಾಡೋಲ್ಲ ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಕವರ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿರುತ್ತೆ ಬ್ಲಾಂಕೆಟ್. ಸೊ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನಾನು ಅವಾಗ ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೀನಿ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಇಬ್ರಿಗೂ ಖುಷಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಇಸ್ material discrepancies are properly dealt with in the books of account, and in case of revaluation, changes exceeding 10% in the net carrying value of the asset only needs to be reported. Illi ಒಂದು ನನ್ನ assertions ಮಾಡುವಾಗ್ಲೂ we discussed, if I'm not wrong, ಅಲ್ಲಿ fixed assets, whether the company has the title deeds of all the immovable properties disclosed in the financial statements are held in the name of the company, is what is there in Caro. Which assertion does it going to address?
Rights and obligations.
Very good. Rights and obligations. It is not like whether all the immovable properties held by the company are disclosed in the financial statements. Illa adididre
Completeness.
very good. Completeness agirutte. So that is about clause 1. Clause 2, we've already covered inventories. Then clause 3, fill the cost records, take the DD, pay the PF of non-residents in INR because it's a credit balance. And all these questions will be asked in MCQ. So that mnemonic helps you to probably remember all the clauses of Caro. If not any other means also, please do remember. Then 2 clauses relating to loans, not so important. Then the deposits. If the company has accepted deposits, whether the provisions of section 73 to 76 of the Companies Act have been complied with, and if there are any orders passed by the company law board or erstwhile, NCLT or RBI directions have been complied with. Fill the cost records, whether the cost records have been made, whether any cost records are prescribed under section 148(1) of the Companies Act. If so, whether the cost records have been so made and maintained. But here it's only cost records, not relating to cost audit. Okay, fill the cost records. The D talks about dues, statutory dues. 2 clauses: undisputed statutory due and disputed statutory due. What are disputed statutory dues? What constitutes disputed statutory dues is a litigation which is legally pursued. Meaning what? You should have preferred an appeal before higher authorities. Legally, either it could be before commissioners or tribunal or high court or supreme court. Only then it will constitute dispute. A mere representation to the department do not constitute dispute. Many a times they have tested in this area. With respect to undisputed statutory due, what is important is whether the company is regular in depositing all undisputed statutory dues, and if there are any statutory dues that are outstanding for a period of more than 6 months from the date they became payable as at March. So you need to check the age of that statutory due as on 31st of March. Only if it is more than 6 months, you need to report that GST dues which are undisputed have not been paid. PF dues that are undisputed have not been paid. So that is statutory dues. And then next clause talks about what?
Fraud.
Sorry?
Income tax.
Income.
Surrendering or disclosing income as part of the tax assessment. How it has been dealt with in the accounting records. Then we have defaults in repayment of loans and borrowings. So that is also very, very crucial. If the company has defaulted in payment of any dues to statutory loans, banks or financial institutions or NBFCs or group companies, those defaults are to be reported. Then pay the PF. P is what? And then here, see, please go through the defaults clause, which is clause number 9. Very important. It covers defaults made and end-use non-compliances. That means what? Short-term loans have been used for long-term purposes, whether the funds raised were used for the purposes for which it was availed for, those aspects needs to be reported by the auditor. And then any loans were taken to satisfy the obligations of subsidiaries or group companies. That also has to be covered. Then P, IPO, FPO, compliance with the end use, and
Private placement
and preferential allotment, compliance with section 42 of the Companies Act. Then talks about clause F. F means fraud.
Fraud.
So connected to section 143.12, read with rule 13 of car rules. This is very in detail covered in your law paper. Here, what is that? Which form needs to be filed by the auditor?
ADT4.
ADT4.
Very good. ADT4. So when is reporting to central government applicable?
Fraud greater than 1 crore.
और थोड़ा चाहिए.
In aggregate.
No. Individually, in aggregate, Allah. When fraud individually exceeds 1 crore, reporting the matter to central government is mandatory. In form number ADT4, that means each fraud. Ramya has made 10 frauds. Each fraud aggregates to 20 crores, but individually, none of the fraud exceeds 1 crore. No reporting to central government. Okay, don't aggregate. Take the fraud individually. So that's how she's been so rich. Next. ADT4 needs to be, whether ADT4 has been filed by the auditor, and then whether any whistleblower complaints have been considered by the auditor during the period under consideration, has to be reported. Then Nidhi company, whether they have complied with the net owned funds to deposit in the ratio of 1:20. And then at least 10% of the deposits have been maintained in unencumbered TD, so to meet out their current obligations. So that is covered in Nidhi rules. And are there any defaults in repayment of loans? Then comes very important clause, related parties, covered under section 188 and 177. What is 177?
Audit committee.
Audit committee. That is also important. What are the companies that are required to constitute audit committee, and what are the powers of audit committee? ಓದ್ಲೇಬೇಕು all ಇರ್ಬೋದು ನಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, but please go through the limits. Then internal audit, clause number 15, INR, internal audit, whether the company has an internal audit system commensurate with the size and its nature of business, connected with section 138. All listed companies are required to comply. Unlisted companies, the profits before tax start with 25, multiply it into 2. Deposits, paid up capital, borrowings, turnover. And then for private companies, it's only BT, borrowings and turnover. If it exceeds that number, only then internal audit is required, and whether the reports of the internal auditors were produced by us during the period. Then comes non-cash transactions. If there are any non-cash transactions, whether by section 192 compliance is made by the company. Then comes NBFC. This entire clause is dedicated to NBFC, whether the company is required to obtain registration under section 45IA of RBI Act. If so, whether the registration is taken up, whether the company has conducted any activity without valid certificate of registration, whether the NBFC, if it's a CIC, core investment company, if there is more than one CIC as part of the group, then that has to be reported. And if there is any exemption claimed by any NBFC, whether the exemption still holds good. All these points are to be communicated. And then next is cash loss connected to going concern. Operating, investing, financial conditions. Correct, no? No, operating investing barala, operating financial and others. So only financially negative cash flows. So not the cash loss andre you take net profits, you make adjustments for all non-cash transactions, like you add back depreciation, you subtract all the non-cash incomes. If the result is negative, that means entity has incurred cash loss, not just for the current year, but you should also report it for the preceding year. So that is something which is important. Then resignation of statutory auditors. If there are any resignation of the statutory auditors, then that has to be reported. Reasons for such a resignation, whether that has been considered by the auditor. And then material uncertainty, connect it with going concern 570, whether based on the analysis of the financial ratios, aging and other factors, whether material uncertainty exists, which may cause the entity not in a position to repay the at least current obligations, dues which are payable in the next 1 year. Then clause 20, in my view, assumes highest importance, CSR, corporate social responsibility, where you have to divide it into two: ongoing projects, other than ongoing projects, compliance with Schedule 7 requirements has to be made. Clause 21, if this is applicable only if you are the holding company auditors. If any subsidiary company auditors have provided comments or observations or qualifications in any of the Caro clauses, then that has to be reported by referencing to which clause number, what is the kind of qualification that the auditor has made. Has to be brought in your standalone audit report. And also, mind you, Caro is not applicable at consolidated financial statements level. So if you are the auditor who is also responsible for the audit of CFS, should Caro report be there? No. Caro should not be given. It is not applicable for consolidated financial statements. Supragna have said correctly. Caro is not applicable if you are giving an audit report on the consolidated financial statements.
Except for
Clause 21 will be covered in the audit report in the standalone financials only. You will not give this in consolidated financial statements report. What is the confusion?
Sir, what I understood was it is not applicable for consolidated financial statement except for clause 21.
No. Entire Caro clause from 1 to 21 is not applicable if you are giving an audit report on the consolidated financial statements. What I said was clause 21 is applicable only if you are the auditor of a holding company. Because if you are auditor of, let's say, a company which does not have subsidiaries, why will this clause be there even? Did you understand?
Yes.
You would say that this clause is not applicable. That's all.
Yes, sir.
Supragna, did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you get it? So Caro is very important. Please go through. So these are the topics which we have covered in audit report. So there are certain other topics that we have not touched upon. So now I believe as per your timetable, you have mock test on
20.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday, right?
Yes, sir.
So tomorrow, do you want one more session for other topics?
Yes.
You want it, or
Yes, sir.
can we have one more session? I'll check if I can have one session. See, the plan was to have it on Sunday, I mean Saturday, Sunday, but for whatever reasons it could not be possible. Monday there were other classes that were going on, so I couldn't take it. So I know that the volume is so high that I am not able to cover. So I will take one more session. I'll check with the class coordinator and we'll keep you posted so that we can cover all the balance topics. And probably I want to discuss some MCQs, 2-3 MCQs are there for me to discuss with you. So we'll do it and I will take all the questions that you have. Okay. So I hope this is adding some value to your studies. I don't want to come and waste your time because I can afford 1, 2, 3 hours, but your time is too dear. So I hope it's adding value, making more effective when you study. So please tell me if you want anything else to be covered. I will also plan accordingly. Okay, please do read well. You eat well if you have not had. You sleep only if you have not slept in the class. Thank you. Good night. Have a nice day. Yes, please. And Pranav, please stay back. Yes. Open to questions. I'll stay. I'll take the questions. You can, yeah. Great.
So for